Good morning. Welcome to Newmarket. My name is Mike Appido, and I represent Newmarket in the legislature, having done so since 2012. My colleague, the Honorable Charlotte DeLorenzo, way back in 2023, sponsored a bill to create a portrait of Wentworth Cheswill. But at long last, that will be unveiled on July 10th at the State House. So those of you who come, I hope you will. That'll be Reps Hall, July 8th. Then in the meantime, on Wednesday, July 1st, the Beat Street extension will be renamed Cheswill Street. So Mr. Cheswill is having an amendment there in Newmarket. My friend, the Honorable Charlotte DeLorenzo, much appreciated, loves history. However, her granddaughter's having a birthday today, so I stood in. And again, welcome to Newmarket. It's a pleasure to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Next up, we have Richard Alperin. I'm MC as such. I'm using my teacher voice. So there you go.
Thank you.
Let's speak up.
So my name's Richard Alperin, and this all started back in 2000 when my wife and I bought not this White House, but the next one over. And a couple of years later, got a letter from a woman in Sacramento. Her name is Sandy Bressler. And Sandy wanted to know, it was addressed to current resident, wanted to know if anybody was taking care of the graveyard on my property. I'm like, I didn't know I had a graveyard on my property. Well, when Wentworth Cheswill owned the foundation that house is currently resting on, it was the center of a 125-acre piece of property. And this house is the third house on the foundation. The second house on the foundation was built by Wentworth Cheswill's grandson, John W. Smart. And then there was when the Carpenters bought it from John W. Smart's executor after he died in 1897, the Carpenters had a bonfire in 1912. And instead of just fixing it up, they decided to move the house over to Packett's Falls Road and build the house that currently sits there. He built it as a wedding present for his new bride, Laura Bell Hendricks, from Cape Elizabeth, Maine.
Read that.
I was reached out to by a man named Arlen Chaffee, who said, we need to start raising money for the graveyard. And he decided with all of his musician friends that we should hold concerts on people's front porches. And we held 3 concerts on front porches. We sold baked goods. We didn't ask for any money to come to the concerts. It was all donations. And we got our first check of $500 for the work on this graveyard from Valerie Cunningham of the Portsmouth Black Heritage Trail. I have a picture somewhere that I can't find of Valerie handing me a check that's about this big and this big for $500. So that was the first donation that I received for the work at the graveyard here.
Right.
So when I got my first $500, I hired a company out of Hampton called Cypher's Monument Company. And the first thing they did was they took the Cheswill, the original Cheswill stone, obviously that one's a replica, and they brought it to a shop and they tried to put it back together, but it was broken in more than a dozen pieces. You will see that headstone when you go to the museum. It's up there. So he said he had to put it on a plywood backing, but then you can't put that out in the weather. You've got to get it inside. So we had a donation ceremony. Many of the Cheswill descendants that I knew from the area, we had a little ceremony at the Historical Society Museum, and the headstone was donated to the museum. So all of a sudden, I start hearing rumors about a couple of men in town who didn't like what I was doing here in the graveyard. I got a call from the chief of police. His name was Rodney Collins. And Rodney Collins, the chief of police, told me that he had been approached by 2 men in town, and they wanted me arrested. And they wanted me arrested because at the time, there was a law that said that you could not enter a private family graveyard to do anything. You can't mow, you can't trim a tree, you can't fix a headstone. That's the way the law was back then. Well, needless to say, myself and David Waters got the law changed, and now if you can't find a descendant, which is what was required, you had to find a descendant. If you can't, the selectmen, the mayor, the town cemetery trustees can give you authority to enter a private family graveyard, but not back then. So these two men, they didn't like the fact that I put that the gravestone in the museum, so they tried to tell me that I had to put it back, and they actually, because he was the president of the Historical Society of the time, they managed to call the Public Works Department and get them to take the stone and put it back in the graveyard on the plywood backing. So then me and Krista, who was the 10th great-granddaughter of Wentworth Cheswill, and the treasurer of the Historical Society, we managed to get it back to the museum. And that only tipped off these two guys even more. So the work that I did here at the graveyard ended up being a new lawn, which I had to mow and water for 3 years because these two men really got in my way. I don't know why, but they wanted to know why the town was paying to have this graveyard mowed. It had been mowed since 1975. It was a senior project. And they said, hey, it's tax dollars. Why are we spending tax dollars in private property? Mr. Alpern found living descendants, let them mow their own graveyard. And she's a single mother up to Somersworth and trying to make a living herself. So I don't know what being these guys got on their bonnet, but they were after me. I didn't know who they were. They didn't know me. I never met them before. So we had a meeting at the town council about mowing the graveyard, and the town council chairman, because it was a big fight over whether it got mowed or not, he said, look, I want to know what private property in the town can we legally maintain with tax dollars and what can't we? And it ended up being that if it benefited the public, then you could maintain private property with tax dollars. The makeup of the town council at that time said, no, we don't think that it's going to benefit the public. So they stopped mowing the graveyard. And for 3 years, I mowed the graveyard and I watered the graveyard myself. And then and when I walked away from that meeting, when they said no, I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be something that I can do so that it will benefit the public to mow the graveyard. Ding! Historical marker. So it took 3 years to get it approved and installed. And after it was installed, I went back to the town council and I said, look, this historical marker is now the only state-acknowledged historical landmark in Newmarket. And I think it would now benefit the public for that graveyard to be mowed. So now the town does mow it, and they rake it in the fall when this place is covered with leaves in the fall. So I found a headstone down that side street over there for a 15-year-old kid who died in 1859. And I'm looking at the last name, same name as what's on that headstone over there. That says Abby Mathis. And it took me a while to find out why Abby Mathis is in the Cheswill graveyard, but I finally figured it out. The Mathis is a big name intertwined with the Cheswill name. But George Mathis was actually Wentworth Cheswill's great-grandson, and this guy had it in a yard sale down that side street over there. So I got the headstone, I brought it over here, I cleaned it up. I was the president of the New Hampshire Old Graveyard for 6 years, and they helped me put it back together. And he's actually buried over at the Riverside Cemetery with many different Mathises. So George Mathis on that headstone died from typhus fever, the same as Wentworth Cheswill. He also died from typhus fever. Yes, I got an email from Henry Louis Gates. Anybody know who Henry Louis Gates is? Of course. I got an email from him in 2007, and he wanted me to put together a biography for him to publish. in a 2008 National African American biography for Wentworth Cheswill. And I've actually got that right here. If anybody wants to see it, it's that big, thick book right there. So I put that biography for Wentworth Cheswill and sent it to Henry Louis Gates for that. And
The client is causing.
I didn't stop searching. So at one time I went to the funeral home director, which ran the graveyards in Newmarket, and I said, are there any other Cheswills in Riverside Cemetery, which is a town-owned cemetery? He gave me some plot numbers, and I went over there and looked, and it amazed me. I lived in Newmarket since 1986, and the house that we bought was across the street from the Riverside Cemetery. It was a split level, and my wife and I had been there from 86 to 2000 when we bought this house right here. And so I'm in the Riverside Cemetery with the directions to get to the plots for other Cheswill graves. I'm looking at it, and then I look up, and it's a nice tall monument about this big with the many different Cheswills all over it. I'm not kidding you when I tell you that when I look past that monument, straight across the street was the front door of the house that I lived in for 14 years before we moved here. The Cheswill monument was directly out the front door of the house that I lived in for 14 years. Goosebumps, anybody? I get goosebumps when I think about that. So I got the town to establish a 5-member board of cemetery trustees because the law says you must, and they didn't know that here. And aside from mowing and fencing the town-owned cemeteries in Newmarket, I also, as a cemetery trustee, because we put them together, we put warrant articles together, and money was spent on the graves in town, the town-owned graves, that had never been spent before besides fences. We started fixing broken headstones and taking down trees that were in danger of falling and breaking headstones.
Chad.
And the last thing that I want to say, one more thing. Wentworth Cheswill's son, Paul, was given Wentworth Cheswill's estate down off Day Road when Wentworth died. He had an estate down. And his graveyard, Paul's, is completely swallowed up right now by the forest. You can still see little bits and pieces of headstones, but nothing that's standing up properly. In my research, I had found out that there is a William Cheswill here that was Wentworth's son, who died at the age of 21. Paul, Wentworth's oldest son, named a child after his brother, William. Both Williams died at the age of 21.
Please, Carl.
Paul's son, who he named after his brother, and Wentworth's son. Over there are 2 headstones for William and Elizabeth. When Chris and I started doing work here in the graveyard, we found 2 slate stones that were original slate stones buried over there by William and Elizabeth. So we dug them up to look at them, took some pictures, and then we decided to rebury them because somebody wanted. So they're buried now, but while burying them, I found a missing slate stone for one of the infants that was here that I knew was missing forever. So we have all the gravestones here now. And has everybody read on the internet that Wentworth Cheswill rode with Paul Revere? Anybody hear that on the internet?
What?
Over and over again on the internet. Wentworth Cheswill rode with Paul Revere. I don't believe that's the case. My historian, who's now passed away, Sylvia Getchell, she told me that more than likely didn't happen. Well, I got something I want to read to you folks, and this is the last thing I will say before I turn it over to John. This is an author in 1908 writing about Newmarket. And they're talking about, there's a meeting being held because the British ships are heading up from Boston up to Portsmouth to the Fort Mary, William and Mary. And Portsmouth was crying out for help from all the local communities. And this is what the author was talking about happened at the meeting to send help. Picture, if you can, the intensity and the excitement which on that day prevailed. In Mr. Moody's meeting house, undoubtedly at the door, stood Cheswill's horse, and he booted and spurred for a heavy ride, like the immortal Revere. Springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes until the vote of the meeting is announced and then bending far forward with word and spur, he urges the faithful beast to its highest speed. And remember that the road to Exeter of today is a very different pathway from the path which the faithful animal traversed on that day. So, you all played telephone in kindergarten. Remember the teacher whispers something in your ear at the beginning of the line, and when it came out the other end, it was, well, that had more than 200 years of talking about to see what came out the other end. So a lot of times on the internet, you read that Wentworth Cheswill rode with Paul Revere. He went west and Cheswill went north. And that's not the case. And I believe that's why that rumor has started. So now I want to introduce you all to John Herman.
Thank you.
And he will take over.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you, John.
All right, so I'm going to give you very briefly kind of a history of the Cheswill family. I'm going to get you back on that trolley, get you some restrooms at the museum just down the street. Got it? All right. So in 1707, a gentleman named David Lawrence signed a conditional manumission, which is basically a document declaring freedom, declaring Richard, the Negro man of Exeter, be freed in 2 years or earlier if Lawrence died. Now, Richard is Wentworth Cheswill's grandfather. We do know that Richard was freed. In 1717, Joseph Hilton sold him land under the name Richard Cheswill. We don't know where the name came from. There are many, many theories. Different historians have made different claims. What we do know is that to date, Richard Cheswill is the first person of African descent to own land in the state of New Hampshire. He did have a child. That child has a ton of rumors. In fact, Wentworth Cheswill has tons of folklore and rumors. Up until about 75 years ago, we just heard an article from 1908, for example, he was a local folk hero. So I have discovered that mid-century, maybe around the civil rights movement, very much we forgot about him in this community. Richard had a child named Hope Still, who just lived up the road, actually. He was a notable housewright, framing massive 3-story sea captain houses and taverns, not in Newmarket. We didn't have that sort of thing. Portsmouth. All right, he worked in Portsmouth. Several of those buildings still stand. We can link him to the John Paul Jones House, the home of the Portsmouth Historical Society, Studley's Tavern at Strawberry Bank. So in Portsmouth, contemporaries would claim, I don't know if anyone knows Charles Brewster. In the 1850s, he published a bunch of articles after interviewing a bunch of people. Contemporaries of Hope Still say that even though he built the house and would frame the house, the owner would have to welcome him with his own hand for a housewarming party. Everybody, even though he built the house, was invited to the housewarming party, but the owner had to step out and welcome him in. I can only assume, infer that is based on the color of his skin. So meanwhile, in Newmarket, New Hampshire, Hope Still was an emerging leader. So he was a free black man. We have town documents that show him petitioning the community for the establishments of roads and bridges, including part of this road that you've just passed on, was part of a petition by Hope Still Cheswill. So Hope Still had one child that we know of. All of this is, the historical record of these individuals is a little bit shifty until we get to Wentworth Cheswill. Cheswill was born in 1746, lived his entire life here in town. He spent decades literally shaping this community. His public service stretched for nearly 50 years, from the years before the Revolution through the early American Republic. He was elected constable in 1768. His community service included selectman, assessor, moderator. He was justice of the peace for the county right up until his death. He was even coroner for a while. He gets a bunch of accolades, such as I went to a museum at Harvard, and read it. They claim he was the first African-American judge. In my book, I say that he is likely the first person of African descent to be elected to public office in the United States. What we do know strongly about Wentworth Cheswill is that he was passionate about history, education, and public service. He understood that if you don't remember things, history can just disappear. He meticulously copied down town records into his personal journal. In 1790, all those records were lost, and that journal is our town history. So we have an incorporation document on the table that is made up of Cheswill's handwriting, for example. What else can I say? All right, education. He was the first school teacher with a schoolhouse here in town. I don't know if you've read Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I think of Bob Crane. Teachers, unpopular. Because they had to travel from house to house, and you had to feed them and take care of them. So they were lame when you were backwoods New England. So Cheswill created his own schoolhouse. It was just down the street. You're going to actually pass by the original site. It's across the street from Cheswill's store. He was also a businessman. That building still stands, though it was moved across the street. He wasn't just teaching children how to read and write. He was literally helping sculpt public education here in this community. He established the first schoolhouse, but he also was part of the first school member and created 6 school districts in this region. As the revolution approached, he was a messenger rider for the patriot cause. This is, between 75 years ago and 100 years ago, there was a Paul Revere fever. And everybody started to link him with Paul Revere. Paul Revere, when he rode up, because right before the raid on Fort William and Mary, Paul Revere actually met at Studley's Tavern, built by Hope Still Cheswill. So there's just like a lot of links. So that rumor doesn't surprise me. Wentworth signed the Association Test of 1776. Only 2 people of color noted to have done so. He's recorded as participating in building rafts to defend Portsmouth Harbor. He served in John Langdon's elite independent company of Light Horse Volunteers. Has Langdon been mentioned?
Nope.
I mean, on the tour. Okay.
Great to meet.
He was pivotal in saving Ona Judge. Pivotal. Cheswill participated in the Saratoga campaign of 1777. Cheswill was an early archaeologist. I am not making this up. He was likely the first archaeologist here in the state. I can say whatever I want. He is likely one of the earliest in the United States. His specifics, he is known in the 1780s to be digging things up, measuring things, and recording them, which sounds like archaeology, sending those things to Jeremy Belknap, who then wrote the History of New Hampshire. And if you read the original document, History of New Hampshire, you can get some old versions on eBay. There's literally a footnote that says Wentworth Cheswill. That's it, just 2 words. Because the earliest history of New Hampshire that he got from the natives were from Wentworth Cheswill. All right, so after the war, with a bunch of veterans, 2 others, he helped establish one of the first lending libraries in this region. So we cannot say it was the first public library, because it wasn't public. It was, you pay a subscription fee and you have collections of books. But Cheswill was very, very interested in promoting literacy and educating the community. So even in his will, a large portion of his will is talking about his books and how you can get a hold of them. So in conclusion, he did die of typhoid fever, but he actually died just following the year without a summer. And I'm not going to go through that, but Google it. Very, very interesting. He made it through the year without a summer, and then he passed away. So, yeah, very interesting. So I have a couple other concluding statements, but I want you to take 2 seconds to look at this stuff, because I'm going to meet you at the museum, and I'll say just a few things and then let you go. Yeah.
You didn't mention anything about his wife.
Yes.
Is there some kind of record of who she was?
So we have her name is Mary. We have we know she was part of the Davis family. So the Davis family is huge. So I don't know if anybody's gone sledding on Wagon Hill. That's the Davis family. They've been around the Great Bay forever. Just down Packers Falls Road, there's a building that was built in 1710 that was a Davis home. We believe that is actually where Mary's family lived, which is not that far from here. She's referred to in documents as Mary Davis of Durham. She literally lived like right across the town line. Just like, I thought it was Newmarket. There's an old story that was told to me, and then I'm not gonna ramble, that there was a bundling board situation between Cheswill and Mary Davis. And if you know what that is, back in the day, if you visited the person you were courting and there's like a snowstorm or something and you can't get back, then a physical large board is placed on the bed and you can sleep next to the person you're courting. So an old Newmarket, Durham town councilor was like, that's what we've known about Wentworth Cheswill for years, just the board story. And I was like, where do these folklore follows this family around? So anyway, I want to thank you all for coming. I'm going to see you momentarily and I'll do a little conclusion about Wentworth Cheswill up at the museum. But Richard has collected so many cool things. Take a moment before you go and he'll talk about those things before you head out. Thank you very much.